guys, it's Mr. Mini Painter, and in this tutorial I'm going to show you how I painted Batman as he appears in The Dark Knight Returns from Batman's Gotham City Chronicles game by Monolith. So this version of the Dark Knight is older, he's grimmier, he's more imposing with a bulkier frame and a costume design that really reflects Frank Miller's iconic graphic novel. This miniature really captures raw power and wary determination, making it a standout piece for any collection. And with two alternative bases you can choose on how to portray your hero. Now, I'm going to take you step by step through priming, base coloring, shading and highlighting this model with special attention on achieving those muted blues, grays and weathered details that really define this look. The goal is to capture not just the colors of the suit, but also the sense of grit and weight that sets this version of Batman apart from his sleeker incarnations. So, with that being said, grab your paints, it's time to bring the legendary Dark Knight Returns Batman to life on your tabletop. Alright, let's get to painting. This particular Batman model comes with two different bases and you can alternate them, so I decided not to glue him to one, so you can switch just to have some options. You can just take this one off and you can see the openings as to put in your model, and there is a smaller one with just some debris lying around you can use as well. So I'm going to show you how I painted both models, the bases, not both models, the Batman itself of course, and the two different bases. The debris one is quite simple, you can add some dirt of course if you want, but it's just some stone, and the larger one is more interesting, so I'm going to show you how I painted those. First, I covered the entire model in a gray primer. Next, I'm starting with the big base and I'm using Mephiston Red, which is nice and bright for the stone parts, the masonry around this model. Now, there's many ways to go about this, depends on your preferences of course. For me, I'm using Buckman's Glow for the brighter stone parts, as it resembles kind of masonry work as well. And I just wanted to have some color options, because the Batman model itself is dark and I wanted to emphasize the darkness of the model by using some bright base. With this done, I'm using Dawnstone to paint the inside of these broken pieces of stone wall. Kind of resembles a concrete look. I'm covering the base as well. But you can also use Mechanicus Standard Grey, as I'm doing with the smaller base. It's a tiny bit darker, and I thought it was more suitable for a debris look. Now I'm continuing on the bigger one by slashing on some Null Oil all around. Make sure that you don't leave any puddles in any kind of corners or holes, because it tends to be too dark. And once dry, I'm dry brushing it with Gray Seer. And I'm doing kind of a stipple effect on the top, as you can see. So just dab your brush and create some specks here and there to make it really look weathered. I'm going all around this base, and we're going to color it up a little bit later on, but this gives a nice worn old look. I'm applying the same effect on the smaller base. Next, I'm returning to Null Oil and focusing mainly on the broken parts, so the broken pieces of rock and the very edges, so just below the top slates, the corners, etc. Just a tiny bit, so you might want to thin it down even. The object here is not to create more darkness, but to create a little bit of difference between the highlighted and the shaded parts. And that's it for the base. Next, we're continuing on Batman himself by starting with Mechanicus Standard Grey. This is his classic Dark Knight suit. So not a lot of black, but mostly grays. Next, we're going to be highlighting the majority with Dawnstone. I'm focusing on all the larger surfaces, leaving the shaded areas as they are. I make sure to leave some dark edge in between those raised areas, so the creases and the folds stay nice and dark. And you focus on the parts where the light would normally hit his body. So in this case, the shoulders, top of the arms, top of the legs, etc. And I'm using a little bit of null now, thin it down just a bit to cover the entire model with and create some nice shade effects. And again, do not leave any puddles anywhere. Just try and move it around until it really suits your satisfaction. Next, Space Wolf's Grey to cover the cape, the hood, the boots, the gloves. It is a contrast paint, and I thought it was a little bit too thin, so I went over it 2 or I think even 3 times. And so in the end you have something with a darkness looking like this. I also hit that Batman logo on his chest, give that a nice blue look as well. Next, we're going to be continuing on highlighting the gray parts with Dawnstone. So I'm going over it with the same color, but this is just to nullify the non-oil effect on some places. So just to brighten it up a little bit. So again, I'm focusing on the larger areas, but I'm decreasing the area that I'm covering. So I'm focusing mainly on those highlight parts. Next step, I'm using Gray Seer, which is even brighter, and again decreasing the area that I'm covering. And what you can do here is kind of outline the part that you want to be the brightest, thin down your paint, and then pull your paint from the darkest towards the brightest part to create a nice transition. Then to kind of blend it back and decrease the brightness, because Batman, let's face it, is a dark character, I'm using Dawnstone again and kind of painting backwards. So from the darkest towards the brightest part, I'm pulling my paint to create a blend, a transition from dark to bright. Also here, make sure that you thin down your paint, so you don't want to completely cover it, you want to blend it with the previous layer. And this way you get a nice transition, a fluid transition from dark to bright. Then with some Elatok blue, I'm highlighting the blues we did before. And I'm focusing on tiny parts, so the very edges of the gloves, some folds, some creases, the cowl of course, the cape, etc. Also the top of the Bat logo on his chest. Once that is done, I'm using Fenrisian Grey to do an extreme edge highlight. But again, focusing on smaller and smaller areas and also these spikes on the side of his gloves. Just give that an edge highlight and let the inside be dark. Same goes for the ears. and give those eyebrows, the nose of the cow, all that nice smooth highlight. Very subtle. Then the face itself we're going to be painting with a base coat of Bugman's Glow. Now he has this big grin on his face, which we're going to try to avoid. Before highlighting the face, I'm using Palette Witch Flesh to paint in the eyes and also the teeth that are showing. Then with Nuln Oil, I'm shading a little bit in the inside of the mouth, creating some shade on the corners of his mouth and really emphasizing his teeth. Next, we're continuing on highlighting the face with Kiselev Flesh. Thin that down and give it a glaze, maybe 2 or maybe even 3 layers, depending on all your preferences really. And I'm focusing on the highlighted parts, and in this case it's just the cheek and the chin basically, maybe just a little bit on the upper lip. Then he has some claws showing, which I'm painting with Iron Warriors. Which is a nice and bright metal look. And I'm highlighting those with some Stormhost Silver, so just the very sides and tips of it to give it some extra sharpness. Last thing to cover is the belt, the classic utility belt with Everland Sunset, which is a nice dark yellow and really works with this color scheme. A classic Batman suit. I'm washing that with some Reikland Flesh Shade to give it some shade and definition. And the final details will be done with Aerial Yellow, just dotting some of those buttons on there and edge highlighting those tiny pockets. And there's our Dark Knight prowling on the rooftops. I think he really looks amazing and I love painting this guy. I hope this video was of any help to you guys, and if it was, please leave a comment below. I'd love to hear from you, and consider following me on both my YouTube and my Patreon page. For now, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in one of my next videos. Bye bye!